After you launch Unity's Hub, make a new project. Clicking that icon, select which install to use. I'm using the latest one. Give your project a name. I'm also adding to the name which render pipeline I'm going to use to make it easy to recognize when I'm sorting through files. Select the universal render pipeline and click on Create. This is a basic template in Unity. We're going to replace the current scene with our scene. You could also create a new scene. However, since this scene is set up already, it's a good way just to leap in and get started. Save your scene, file, save as. I'm going to call this scene 01. Take over the scene. I'm opening up the examples and selecting the workshop set and pressing the delete key to remove it. I'm going to import my own assets. For doing so, set up a folder, create folder. You can name this folder room. Double clicking within this room folder goes to that space. To get back out to the main assets, either click here or here and double click to get in there. You want to keep your project organized, so creating folders is the way to go. To get the asset in here, right click, import new asset. I'm selecting the exported FBX to import into here. Clicking on import. This is the top level of the asset. If you click this triangle, you can see all the parts that this asset is made up of. It includes the objects and also the materials. I'll fold this up for a moment. Next step is to extract the textures and then extract the materials. With this asset selected, in the inspector, click on Extract Textures. Save these textures within the same folder. When this window comes up, click on Fix Now. Extract the materials. I'm saving them to the same place. And I extracted the textures and materials. This way I could work on them live within Unity. If I want to place it in the original coordinate system, I could just drag and drop it here. If I just want to interactively place this room, just click and drag into the viewport. Click it anywhere. I'm going to drop it into the hierarchy. This way it's lined up on the grid where it was lined up in the 3D application. Pressing the F key to focus in on it. Pressing the Option left mouse button to rotate the camera. Option and right mouse button to zoom in. Option middle mouse button to pan. And this is the start of our scene. The next part is setting up lighting and adjusting the scene. Here's all the textures for the modern metal wall, which is in the background. In my 3D application, all I could apply was the albedo, the color, and also the bump map. Some shaders will also allow you to apply roughness or metal. I wasn't able to apply the height map because that wasn't an option with the shaders I had in the 3D application. Here's the wall, and now I want to apply those extra maps. I'm going to locate the shader here, and there's two ways to do it. One, you can click on the wall with the wall selected. It's also going to show the attached shader. The other way would be to click on the shader within the assets, and that just focuses in on the whole shader. I'm going to add the height map and occlusion maps. I'm going to drag the occlusion map, and I'll also drag the height map into the assets folder. Clicking on this shader, dragging the occlusion map to that swatch right there. Playing with the levels of occlusion. You can see occlusion adds a lot to the visualization of this shader. An alternative way to apply the textures is to, besides dragging and clicking on a swatch, you also click the little target icon here. See if in a good way it affects the look of your scene. And go around your scene and do that to the rest of your objects. Let me set my game camera to my view, selecting the main camera. Game object, align with view. Let's pop over to the game tab. The distortion of this camera can be corrected by selecting the camera. I'm going to click on physical camera. I'm going to the scene. I'm going to zoom out. Going to my game object, align with view. Going to my game tab. Now you don't see that distortion that was there earlier. You can still move around here. This is just a freeform view. You can select the camera also here. And instead of just aligning with view, you can move it up and down, and you see the preview down here. I'm going to add a light to the scene, and that light I want to add is right here at this light bulb for this lamp. Go to Game Object, Light, and the first type of light I'm going to use is a point light. Wow, that's really lit up. Let's see how it looks in the game view. Definitely lit up. I'm going to start out by decreasing this point light's intensity by selecting point light here. Maybe setting it to 0.5. That seems like a good number. Let me drag it towards the light bulb. Take a peek in the game view. So the scene's already looking a lot more interesting. Don't think this robot like the light shining on it. Before continuing playing with the light, I'm going to make sure that my light generation is turned off. Auto generation lighting is on. I'm going to click this icon, or you can go under Window, Rendering, Lighting, and drag that panel's tab and dock it over here. The shortcut is to click this icon, Auto Generate Lighting on. Click it, opens up this panel, and I'm going to turn off Auto Generate. This is so I can update the scene without the drag of lights being generated over and over again. If I want this object to cast a shadow, and this one as well, onto the floor, I could turn off my directional light. Without getting into light baking, I know that in URP, you can use a spotlight to create shadows. So I'll create a spotlight. And there's my spotlight on the floor. You can drag it to position it, or you could just maneuver your viewport like this and pretend you're looking through this object with the spotlight selected. Go to Game Object, Align with View. Now I can rotate around. So that's what my spotlight's doing right now. I'm going to drag the spotlight forward. And I'll position it at the tip of the light. If you need to rotate it a little bit more, that's fine. I'm going to make the spotlight wider, and you have two options. One is adjusting the inner and outer angle, or the second is to drag the gizmo right there, the range, and just pull it bigger. And have some fun playing with spotlights. I wanted this to be a real-time light since I have some post-volume effects happening to get that nice glow, yet I wanted the ability to see some real-time shadows within the scene. And using the URP, that means using a spotlight. Or the second option would be to bake out light maps, but when you start to bake out light maps, it starts to slow down your work process. Excellent for better shadows and better lighting. However, if you're looking for a quick way to light up your scene right now and then go back and bake later, this is a great option, using a combination of point lights for real-time lighting and then spotlights for a little more real-time lighting and casting shadows. As you go around your room, if everything wasn't converted to the universal pipelines material, and you know shader is converted to the universal pipeline when there's shader, when you select the swatch and it says universal render pipeline lit, something that's not converted is this robot. When I select on this robot, I can see that it's a bot AI standard surface material. I could convert it right here, or I could click on the swatch and select next to shader, scroll to universal render pipeline, and select lit. I'm going to have to, since I didn't use texture maps, I was using color, I'm going to have to select colors for it again. And the reason I would do this, maybe I want to wire in with the universal pipeline, various maps, or just make all my materials uniform, knowing that they all have this metallic slider and smoothness slider as well to adjust. By adjusting smoothness, take 2. When I without smoothness and with smoothness increase, there's also, because there's a post effect here, there's also this glow coming off of the robot. The light's bouncing. I'm going to animate a pushing of the camera, and to do that, let me select my main camera. And currently my camera looks like this. I want to push past the robot and look at the shelf and get an animation going with the vases falling using physics. The first part of the animation is just a simple pushing of the camera. I created this new folder called animation. The animation assets will be created in here. With the camera selected, going to Window, Animation, Animation. Click on this button to create a new animation clip for this object. This will be the name of it, and I'm calling it Camera Main. I'm going to select the properties for the keyframes, and those properties will be position and rotation. Going to Add Properties, clicking on Position, clicking on plus, going back to Add Properties, Rotation, click the plus sign. Move around this viewport, Option middle mouse button will pan, Option right mouse button will zoom, and Option and left mouse button will let you also just drag through here. So middle mouse button or left mouse button with the Option or Alt key to move around the scene. New animation I don't need to end, so I'm selecting those keys using marquee selection, pressing the delete key. Let me go back to the beginning. And this is what our camera sees currently. And by 3 seconds later, let me drag over to 3 seconds later, we're going to be at that workbench in the back. To get back there, I'm going to select the camera in the view, pick up the move tool, which is W key, and clicking on this plane to be parallel to the ground. So right here, just pushing the camera forward. And I'll make corrections to the height of the camera and the clipping plane in a second. I get part of that robot in there. And we can use rotation as well. When you're kind of in the right position, let's say here, maybe I'll pull back just a little bit, like here, so we can see some of that falling action. Click on Add Keyframes, and that'll add keyframes for the position and rotation track. This animation will naturally loop. To get it not to loop, click on the camera clip right here in the animation folder that I created. And this will be whatever you named your animation clip. And uncheck loop. The other thing that I know I have to correct when the animation gets closer, there are some clipping plane problems, the nearest clipping plane, and I'll just adjust that right now in case you're seeing clipping going on. Select your main camera. In the inspector, under clipping planes, set that down to 0.01. You don't have to worry about objects being clipped out, seeing the inside of a model when you should. Let me play this animation. All right, that's good. We'll have a reaction shot in a moment. I'm going to stop playing. Let me focus in on the clip again, because I want to not just only lift up through here. Let me click on the camera. I want this to kind of stay close to the ground up to 1.5 seconds in. Even though I have keyframes here and here, you can go back in between and adjust what's going on. So staying a little lower to the ground up until that point. And click on Add Keys. To travel between keys, in case you want to overwrite keys, you use this arrow to go to the previous keys, or this one with the little line to go to the next keys. And you would do that in case you want to step right here, and you don't want to accidentally create double keys, and readjust. And the readjustment won't take hold until you hit the Add Keys again, and that will overwrite the previous set of keys. Let me look at this. and then lifts up and focuses in on these objects. Let's get some animation going using the physical-based system in Unity. When things are in prefab, you can unpack them. That's still not going to give me the pivot point I want for this animation. Selecting this workbench top, clicking here in the inspector to go hide it. I already made an FBX just with the workbench top in it. Could use that as my replacement top. Could fold this up. I'm going to drag this to the hierarchy, and because I exported it from in the same position as the rest of the file, my tabletop will end up exactly here. The animations could be created using physics. I'm going to have to assign colliders to these objects and rigid bodies to here, and optionally physics materials to these. Going to add components and search for collider. I already did a search. You add a box collider. And I'm going to click on the edit just to make sure the box collider is fitting around that object nicely, and it is. I'll do the same box colliders for these objects. Add component, box collider, and so on. I'm going to apply rigid bodies to these objects. Selecting object, add, search for rigid. Rigid body, you can adjust the mass on each one. You could do that later as well. Selecting the workbench, clicking on Window, Animation, Animation. I'm going to create a new animation clip, and this is the workbench top. Save. Properties I'm going to animate are position and rotation. Clicking on Add Property under Transformation, Position, Add Property, Transformation, Rotation. I think this last part should be dropping off a little more. So going to these keyframes, clicking here just to make sure I'm there. Let me make it go like this. Big slide. Clicking on Add Keyframes to replace the current ones. I could adjust the camera angle, but let's just record this. Going under Window, Package Manager, wait for the packages to load. Click on this settings icon, Advanced Project Settings. With Package Manager selected, click Enable Preview Packages. I unstand, close this window. For this drop-down, select Unity Registry, type in Record to get the Unity Recorder, install. Now this scene can be recorded. I just want to change the animation for my camera. Let me go back to my camera. Let's take a look at that one. Windows, Animation, Animation. Selecting the camera. Let's look at where it ends up. It ends up here. I want to end up a little lower. Click on these keys here. Zoom out my scene a little bit. Pick up the Move tool, and I'm going to lower my camera. You know the action's happening here. Oh, look, happy accident. We've got the bot in the scene. I'm going to record this. Windows, General, and Recorder window. It's going to be a new recorder. Going to just make a quick MP4 out of it. Make sure this is checked. Last step is just to click on the big start button.